They say the final straw is never dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible, until it's too late. I'm done. Those were the only words I managed as I headed for the door. Behind me, my wife snapped back. Fine. And don't bother coming back. Normally, I would have shot a predictable "go to hell" over my shoulder before slamming the door. But something inside me had shifted. Instead of anger, there was a calm, almost eerie, almost polite. And somehow, that calm made everything feel even more permanent. For 14 years, we'd thrown the same sharp phrases at each other like weapons, trapped in a cycle that never seemed to end. But this time, I knew I wasn't coming back in a few days after cooling off. This time, she'd realize I wasn't bluffing. And as I walked away, leaving everything behind, the memories, the comfort, the life we built together, I couldn't help but wonder, had I finally found freedom? Or was I about to discover that some doors, once closed, never open again? Over the last 6 months, Jenna, my wife, had turned into a walking demolition crew. Her words landed like wrecking balls, and half the time I couldn't figure out what triggered them. To say her comments stung would be putting it lightly. I started avoiding home just to keep the temperature from boiling over. Some nights I sat in the car for half an hour before even stepping inside. Other nights, I waited until she and our daughter, Carrie, finished dinner, then wandered in late, pretending I'd been busy. Sometimes they saved me leftovers. Recently, though, the fridge had been mysteriously empty every time I came home late. Anyway, name's Kurt Kaminsky. Technically David Kurt Kaminsky. But since my dad's also a David, they slapped Kurt on me from birth to avoid confusion. No, I'm not a junior. Dad's David John Kaminsky. Why he didn't just make me DJ or David Jr., I'll never understand. I would have taken either. And yeah, if you haven't guessed by the last name, I'm Polish. Or half Polish. Mom mixed in German, French, Irish, and English. But around here, nobody cares about the blend. With Kaminsky on my ID, I'm simply the Pole. And in a town of 10,000? The only other Polish guy is my father. So every Polish joke imaginable? I've already heard it. Twice. What I didn't know, until 4 weeks ago, was that my soon-to-be ex-wife wasn't who I thought she was at all. Because while I was keeping my distance to avoid her verbal landmines, she was busy hiding something much bigger. One Monday evening, instead of going home, I ate alone at a diner. I sat in a booth, menu open, mind wandering, and then I heard the word "Pole" from the booth behind me. Naturally, my ears perked up. So how long you been with the Polish guy's wife? Since they tied the knot? Hell, I even betted her on their wedding day. And he still doesn't know. The first voice I didn't recognize. The second? I knew instantly. My best friend, George Carey. Everything inside me froze. I couldn't hear the rest, just static, until George added, "Yeah, we meet up at least twice a month. Kurt's so clueless he'll die not knowing." Right then, the waitress stepped up. I muttered, "Sorry, I need to go," dropped a tip, and slipped out before either of them saw me. My head felt like it was full of cement. Jenna? With George? The same George who stood next to me at my wedding? The same George who works on every single car I own? He's not exactly my employee, more like a personal mechanic. I run a used car dealership, and George handles all repairs, inspections, everything. He's been my go-to for years. I pay him well, keep him busy, trust him with every car that leaves my lot. Once I even tried to bring him on as full-time staff. He joked, I couldn't respect myself if I worked for a Pole. He laughed, but something in his tone stuck with me. I brushed it off. Looking back, maybe I shouldn't have. Leaving the diner, I drove around for an hour trying to convince myself I'd misheard. Maybe he was just bragging. Maybe he was lying to impress a stranger. But I couldn't shake the feeling. When I finally went home, Jenna acted completely normal. Fine by me, I needed to gather facts before confronting her. When she fell asleep, I checked her email, spotless. Her phone was locked, but it didn't take long. Our daughter's birthday unlocked it. I found a few odd messages, but nothing tying her to George. For a moment, I even thought he was just talking big like he used to back in school. But Jenna's recent behavior, something was definitely happening behind the scenes. Next day at the dealership, George fired off his usual Polish jokes. This time I snapped. George, what the hell do you even know about Poland? Bet you couldn't find it on a map if your life depended on it? You call Poles dumb, but I'm pretty sure they could at least locate the US. Maybe even this state. Now get to work. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. He isn't a book-smart guy, great with engines, not geography. Back in school, I helped him pass half his classes. Thinking about that now made me sick. I shut myself in my office and thought through my next step. Confronting them directly would get me nowhere. I needed proof. I called a PI in Santa Fe and explained everything. He said because their meetups were irregular, surveillance would get pricey. But, he added, you can track her phone. Or put cameras in your house. But unless you buy expensive equipment, she'll notice them. Best bet? Tag her phone and watch the map. He told me which app to use and even refused payment. I insisted on sending him a check. My whole business runs on treating people with respect. I wasn't about to stop now. That night, when everyone slept, I installed the tracking software on Jenna's phone. It synced to mine quietly in the background. For the first time in weeks, I slept like a rock. Next day, I monitored her movements. Bookstore job at the university. Salon. Grocery store. Home. George's location didn't overlap hers once. For that day at least, nothing happened. That evening, I tried easing the tension at home and suggested dinner out. She agreed. Carrie hesitated like teens do but came along. At dinner, I casually mentioned George. Jenna stiffened, instantly. Changed the subject. That was enough to relight my suspicions. That night, she seemed almost warm toward me. When we got to bed, she even hinted at being intimate. And I'll be honest, I didn't know how to feel. If she was cheating, should I even allow myself to be close to her? But I decided I wouldn't initiate anything until I had proof. She made the first move and, well, we ended up together. Nothing unusual about it. I'll just say I enjoyed it more than she did. All week I kept checking the tracking app. Nothing. No odd destinations. No late-night escapes. Nothing suspicious at all. Saturday night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone again. Still nothing. I almost convinced myself George was just talking crap like he used to, trying to sound impressive to some random guy. But deep down, something still gnawed at me. I tossed and turned until 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, feeling that quiet, unwelcome whisper inside me. Something's wrong. Keep watching. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, unable to slip into sleep no matter how many times I closed my eyes. Eventually, I gave up and wandered downstairs, hoping a drink might settle my mind. I poured myself a Jack Daniels and Coke, the ice clinking softly in the glass, and sat there alone with Jenna's phone in my other hand. I wasn't planning on checking it again, but something inside pushed me. I typed in the passcode, our daughter's birth date, and the screen unlocked. That number hit me like a punch to the chest. Carrie's birth, that whole pregnancy, suddenly it all came rushing back. Jenna's pregnancy with Carrie had been rough, terrifying at times. We almost lost her more than once. Jenna had an Rh factor issue with her blood, which made her body try to reject the baby. The last 3 weeks before delivery, she was on strict bed rest. No stress, no movement, just doctors and prayers. And then Carrie arrived, exactly 9 months after our wedding day. We were ecstatic she was healthy, even though from day one she was exhausting. She cried nonstop, slept terribly, and struggled with nursing. It felt like every ounce of joy and energy evaporated from our daily lives. But what I kept circling back to was that timing. 9 months. Exactly 9 months. People call babies like that wedding night babies. Either conceived on the wedding night, or sometime during the honeymoon. And that's when the thought hit me, sharp, cold, unwelcome. George was telling the truth. Jenna might have already been pregnant before we even said our vows. She was on birth control, yes. And no, we didn't wait until marriage. Physical closeness was always a big part of our relationship. But the doctor did once mention that the stress of the wedding might have thrown off her hormones, making the pill less effective. Well, if the pill failed that night, it could have failed earlier too. Suddenly I felt the room tilt. There was a real, terrifying possibility, a full 50-50 chance, that Carrie wasn't mine. And then, like an awful joke delivered by fate itself, one thought flashed through my mind. If the early bird gets the worm, then maybe George, the early worm, got the birdie. My stomach twisted. I stood up, made my way to the bathroom, grabbed some cotton swabs and headed to Carrie's room. She was finally a good sleeper now that she was 4. Took her years to get there. She lay there with her mouth slightly open, snoring softly. It took nothing to gently swab her cheek. She didn't even flinch. I sealed the sample in a plastic bag. Then I took my own sample. Even if she turned out to be my biological daughter, Jenna's potential infidelity still hovered over everything like a storm cloud. But one crisis at a time. I tucked the samples away and tried to breathe. Sunday came with chores as usual, each of us handling our responsibilities. I tried my best to avoid both Jenna and Carrie, afraid my emotions might spill over. My mind argued with itself nonstop. What if I was wrong? What if I was overreacting? What if I was right? Kurt? Something bothering you? Jenna asked at one point. I scrambled for an excuse and blurted, thinking of buying a load of cars at the next auction. Might stretch the budget for a bit. She nodded as if the business belonged to both of us. Just don't overextend us. Funny how she always called it our business, even though legally and financially it was mine alone. I'd set it up that way intentionally. Small-town religious communities love to gossip, and I didn't need my personal life bleeding into my professional one. I'm thinking of paying off the credit cards and keeping only one open, I added. It was partly true, and partly a cover if she ever learned why I was rearranging finances. Do whatever you think's best, she said, completely detached. That's when an idea struck me, a sudden spark of clarity. If everything went south, clearing the debts and reorganizing would protect me. Monday morning, I woke early and drove to Western New Mexico University. The science department pointed me to the department head. When I explained what I needed, he seemed almost intrigued. I handed him my business cards and told him I'd offer 10% off to anyone on staff. He chuckled. I've been considering upgrading from my Camry. I may swing by. Happy to help, I said. My smile felt real, but underneath, dread gnawed at me. This test, these results, they could end my entire marriage in a single sentence. Funny thing? The story I told Jenna about buying cars was just a flimsy excuse to hide the truth. Yet now, the idea of expanding inventory seemed appealing. When I got back to the dealership, I called in Paul, my accountant, loan officer, and occasional salesperson. We're going to make this all work, I told him. But there's something else. He raised an eyebrow. I want to pay off my house. Can we arrange a lump sum payoff? He nodded. I'll crunch numbers and let you know. After he left, I almost called my lawyer for a family law recommendation. But I stopped myself. One step at a time, Kurt. Get proof first. Then act. Monday and Tuesday dragged. Every hour felt like a day. Then, late Wednesday evening, the department head called. He was coming by to discuss both the results and the car he wanted. When he arrived, one look at his face told me everything. The samples aren't related, he said quietly. I nodded slowly, the breath leaving me in a heavy exhale. I'd braced myself, but hearing it still felt like being struck. He gave me the envelope. I didn't cry, didn't yell, just absorbed it. Then, in a voice far calmer than I felt, I asked, "Now, tell me about that car you're looking for." He laughed weakly. I know it sounds cliché, but turning 50 has me craving a sports car. Thinking of a Miata. I didn't have one on the lot, but I promised to search the next day at the auction. After he left, I informed my assistant I might be stepping out early. She barely reacted. She runs half the place herself anyway. Driving through town, everything looked different. Familiar streets felt foreign. I finally called my lawyer. He sounded genuinely sad for me and referred me to someone he trusted. I booked an appointment for the next day. Later, sitting alone at a diner eating a light snack, I found myself wondering, did I waste 15 years of my life? I had raised Carrie, loved her, lost sleep for her. And while I still felt something paternal toward her, the undeniable truth was that biologically she wasn't mine. What was I supposed to do now? Pretend I hadn't learned the truth? Pretend everything was fine? No, there was no pretending anymore. One thing, however, became crystal clear. George was going to face consequences. Best friend or not, men like him weren't friends at all. And Jenna? She'd kept this secret for years. Whether or not she knew Carrie wasn't mine, she'd betrayed me on our wedding day with my best man. All those years of suspicion, all those strange behaviors, suddenly everything lined up. Rage bubbled inside me, hot and blinding. I needed space before I did something reckless. I called Jenna. "Hey, I'm spending the night in Albuquerque," I said. "Auction prep for tomorrow at 8. "Oh," she replied, caught off guard. "All right then. Have a safe trip." I rarely stayed overnight for auctions, so this sudden plan was out of character. Part of me wondered if she'd use my absence to meet George. She'd have to explain herself to my parents if Carrie needed anything, but lying was her specialty. I hung up, feeling the full weight of everything pressing down on me. My marriage wasn't cracked anymore. It was shattered. I kept glancing at Jenna's phone tracker throughout the evening, checking every hour or so to see whether her little blue dot wandered anywhere suspicious. Meanwhile, I drove toward Albuquerque with a single mission in mind: walk into that auction and walk out having secured at least 20 cars. One of them, hopefully, a Mazda Miata I'd already arranged to pick up and have transported back to my lot after the auction ended. But there was a different problem clouding my mind. Who could I trust to inspect all these vehicles once they arrived back home? I already knew George wouldn't be getting another dime of my business once he finished the repairs already on his plate. And if he found out I had 24 more cars inbound, he'd probably start seeing dollar signs and jack up every charge he could. No, he wouldn't be getting that opportunity. I decided to keep quiet until the very last moment and ask a local auction dealer to recommend someone competent and reliable. Someone who wouldn't milk me dry. When I reached Albuquerque around 9 a.m., I checked into a Best Western. Even though I was the owner of my company, I couldn't justify blowing money on a fancy hotel using business funds. The room was decent, the bed was comfortable, good enough for a simple man like me. First thing I did was pull out my phone and check Jenna's tracker again. Still at home. Or, at least her phone was. That night, sleep refused to come. My mind kept circling the same dark questions. What she was doing, what she had been thinking, how she could justify an affair, on our wedding day no less, and still carry it on afterward like nothing happened. The weight of it forced me to reevaluate everything. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I believed we shared something sacred. Now it felt like the whole thing had been a mistake from day one. In those early years, we never planned to have a child immediately. We promised we'd wait 3 or 4 years after the wedding. We talked about wanting 3 kids, imagining a future full of noise and laughter. Then came Carrie, far earlier and far more chaotically than expected. And discovering that my own best friend was the reason our plans fell apart, made every struggle afterward feel pointless. 14 years of effort vanished under the shadow of that one revelation. If George hadn't been involved with her, maybe Jenna would have gotten pregnant with me under better circumstances. Maybe her pregnancy wouldn't have been so rough. Maybe Carrie wouldn't have been such a difficult child. Maybe Jenna wouldn't have shut the door on having more kids. But instead, George had torn my life apart. First by seducing my future wife on the day that was supposed to begin our forever, then by continuing to entertain her twice a month, all while laughing at how oblivious I was. That night, as I lay in bed trying to quiet the storm in my head, the anger rose again, hot, heavy, suffocating. I forced myself to breathe, grabbed the remote, and flicked on some mindless comedy. Eventually, the laughter softened the tension in my chest, and around 11, exhaustion pulled me under. The next day at the auction, everything ran like a well-oiled machine. I grabbed some incredible cars for good prices and made solid connections with local dealers. No Miatas were listed at the auction, but 2 dealers each had one, a red and a black. I told them I'd finalize the purchase depending on the color my client preferred. Both dealers were eager to move forward, no hesitation. Honestly, I should have been coming to this auction more often. The energy, the conversations with other business owners, it reminded me why I loved what I did. For a few hours, it even helped me forget the mess waiting for me back home. But that afternoon, during my meeting with the lawyer, everything came crashing back. The news hit like a punch. I could lose half my assets, be forced to pay alimony, and even pay child support for a child who wasn't biologically mine. Right then and there, I made a decision. I wasn't filing for divorce. Not yet. If she wanted to stay with George's child, then fine. I'd pay off the mortgage, leave her in the house, and maintain all the utilities. But because only my name was on the mortgage, she wouldn't be able to sell a thing. She could live there, but she wouldn't be able to profit from it. What I had to worry about was my business. Even though it was registered as a corporation, it wasn't fully shielded, not in the way I needed it to be. The thought of losing it made my stomach twist. When I finally got home that night, completely drained, I told Jenna I was exhausted and planned to shower and go straight to bed. "Do you want dinner?" she asked. "No. I grabbed a late lunch," I replied. At least she pretended to care. The shower was the closest thing to peace I'd felt all week. For a moment, the hot water almost made me believe I could wash the chaos off my skin. When I hit the bed, sleep claimed me instantly. By morning, I felt sharper, clearer. I reached the office long before Jenna and Carrie woke up. Surrounded by spreadsheets and sales reports, I started executing my plan. I told Paul about the 23 cars and instructed Anna to stop assigning jobs to George. She gave me a puzzled look. "You're the boss," she said. "Anna, you're a lifesaver," I replied. At 9 on the dot, I called my business lawyer. "Your company is registered," he said, "but she might still be able to force a sale to claim its value. Consider selling it now before she can touch it." "I can't," I said flatly. "This business is my life." "I'll think about it," I added. "I'll have an answer by the end of the week." That conversation knocked the wind out of me. I'd built that business from the ground up. Sweat, sacrifice, every ounce of myself poured into it. Unlike Carrie, I thought bitterly this creation was truly mine. Rage rose again, but years of running a company taught me how to tuck emotions away and focus. I moved on to the next task, calling Doug. "Doug, it's Kurt. I've got leads on 2 Miatas, one red, one black. You still want one?" "If the price is right," he said. "Which color are you leaning toward?" "Let me see both," he replied. "Fair enough. Even if you don't take it, I can sell it easily," I assured him. Then he asked, "Which one do you prefer?" "Red pops more but fades faster. Black looks sleek but turns into an oven during summer. You planning to garage it?" "Yeah," he said. "Then go with red. When can we meet?" "Monday or Tuesday." "Perfect. Call me when you get here." After that, I rang the dealer with the red Miata and negotiated a swap for a BMW that had been sitting on my lot for months. He was interested. Big cities are kinder to BMWs than small towns. Later, George strolled into the lot with a handful of cars waiting for repairs. He worked as an independent contractor, and his flexible schedule had always been convenient for me. But now, every time I saw him, it felt like swallowing broken glass. When he overheard the salesman talking about the incoming shipment of 23 cars, he approached me. "Hey Kurt, when are those auction cars coming in? I need to plan the repair schedule." "The auction house will deliver them, probably late next week, maybe early the following," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the tension boiling under my skin. He walked away and I forced myself to laugh casually, even though every part of me wanted to explode. That weekend, I avoided Jenna completely. Yard work, errands, anything to stay away from her. I didn't bother checking her tracker anymore. At this point, I didn't feel jealousy or heartbreak, only disgust. Raising another man's child, his child, was something I could never forgive. By Monday, I was back at the car show, ready to bury myself in work again. The deal to exchange the BMW for the Miata came together faster than I expected, and by sunrise I was already heading toward Albuquerque to finalize everything. "We'll grab lunch when you get here," the dealer promised over the phone. Before leaving, I let Anna know I'd be out the entire day and needed her to keep things steady at the office. "Consider it done, boss," she replied with that calm professionalism she was known for. In my mind, I made a mental note. She deserved a raise. The trip felt strangely peaceful. Closing the deal, sharing lunch with the dealer, even laughing about a few stories from the road, it all felt almost like a small escape from the chaos waiting at home. Driving back with the fiery red Miata, the wind whipping through my hair, I felt a hint of youthful freedom I hadn't tasted in years. On a whim, I decided that after picking up this red one, I'd secure a black car as well. Why not? It wasn't like I needed space for more than 2 people anymore. When I pulled into the driveway, that bright red sports car immediately drew attention. I saw Jenna glance outside, say something to Carrie, and then they both stepped out of the house like judges arriving to deliver a sentence. "Why do you need this car, honey?" Jenna asked in that overly patient, patronizing tone. "We need something with a back seat for Carrie." I shrugged, keeping my voice even. "Just picked it up for a client from Albuquerque. Thought maybe the 2 of you would want a ride." "No, I'm not into small cars," she replied flatly, as if the car somehow offended her existence. I turned to Carrie. "What about you? Want to hop in?" She didn't even hesitate. "No, Dad. I get teased enough already because of my last name. I'm not riding around in some Polish used car salesman's toy." Her words hit me harder than any punch George had ever thrown back in the old days. For a second, all I could do was stare. I looked at Jenna, waiting for her to correct our daughter, to guide her, to say something, anything. She didn't. She treated the insult like background noise. And in that moment, it clicked. The disrespect that began with her had already been passed down. I swallowed the anger and simply said, "All right. I'm going for a drive. I'll be back later." I spent the next few hours cruising around Silver City, letting the night air cool my frustration. By the time I returned home around 9:30, I barely said a word. I showered, crawled into bed, and hoped for silence. But silence never lasted long with Jenna. She barged in and flipped the light on, forcing my eyes shut. "Are you seriously pouting because we didn't pick a sports car? Aren't you going to spend time with your family? Honestly, Kurt, you're not just Polish, you're childish." This sudden contempt, this boldness, it wasn't her voice I heard, it was George's influence inside her words. And the worst part? The daughter I'd raised wasn't even mine. I snapped. "Well, it looks like you and your daughter don't want to pole around anyway. Maybe I should just leave." From that night on, our home became a frozen wasteland, 2 strangers living in the same house, pretending nothing was wrong. The next day, Doug stopped by to inspect the Miata. He lit up like a kid at Christmas. "This is beautiful," he said, running his hand along the hood. We went over the numbers and he was stunned. 3,000 under Kelly Blue Book. When the paperwork wrapped up, he added, "My best friend handles the purchasing at the university. We rotate about 16 cars every couple years. Maybe it's small business, but I can introduce you." "Absolutely," I told him. "I'll take care of him, same as anyone who comes recommended." This was how I built my business, showing gratitude, treating people like partners, not paychecks. On Wednesday, my lawyer called. "Kurt, I think I've found a solution to your problem. Can you come by this afternoon?" I didn't even hesitate. Home had become unbearable. The plan was brilliant. Expensive, slow, and stressful, but brilliant. It would take about 2 weeks to execute. During that time, I slowly started moving my personal belongings out of the house. Tools, clothes, anything that mattered, shifting them quietly into a nearby apartment. Jenna never noticed. She was too focused on laundry and her own schedule to realize half my closet was already gone. That Monday night, when I finally told her, "I'm leaving," she didn't even flinch. She just threw the same tired insults about my heritage and my job. In the past, I'd disappear to a motel for a night or 2 whenever things boiled over. But this time was different. This time there was no plan to return. By Tuesday morning, I was in the parking lot early. I gathered my employees into the conference room for what seemed like an ordinary weekly meeting. "Good morning, everyone," I began. "The cars from the auction arrived yesterday. They're inspected, prepped, and ready to sell. Starting today, we will no longer be using George's services. Just tell him we're moving in a different direction." I paused, feeling a tightness in my chest. "You're like family to me. And because of that, this is hard, but I've sold the business." Gasps filled the room. Eyes widened. Then they slowly turned toward Anna as I continued. "Nothing changes for any of you except Anna. She'll be taking on part of my responsibilities and she'll be getting a raise." After we wrapped up the meeting, we walked out, and there he was. "George, why wasn't I in the meeting?" he asked. Because it was for staff only. You're not an employee, I replied without emotion. He looked confused. I see the cars have arrived. I'll start working on them today. No need, I cut him off. They're already prepped. I've sold the business and the new owner is switching directions. His face fell. Not because he cared about me, because in his world, everything revolved around what he lost. What am I supposed to do now? He asked, wounded. Pick up your check for the last 2 weeks. Anna rarely assigned you work anyway. No sympathy. None. Later I pulled Anna aside. This stays between us, I told her. Of course, Kurt. You have my word. I laid everything out. The new companies in Nevada, the shell structure, the strategy to prevent Jenna from claiming the business during the upcoming divorce. When I told her about the affair, about Carrie, about George, her face changed instantly. Protective. Angry. Loyal. She asked nothing more. One last task, I said. Order a new sign and fresh letterheads. The business will now be called Helpless Car. I'll explain the name someday, but trust me, it fits. Confused but committed, she nodded. When I finally drove away in my Audi, headed toward Albuquerque, a strange quiet settled inside me. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Jenna. I didn't think she'd reach out this fast, but then again, this was our pattern. I'd vanish for a day, she'd call, we'd talk, and I'd return. But this time everything was different. I finally answered the call, not because I cared, but because I was curious about what excuse she'd use this time. The car's speakers filled with her shaky voice. Kurt? What's going on? Nothing, I said flatly, just driving to Albuquerque. Why are you going there? To pick up the car. She hesitated, then added, so what I heard wasn't true? I assume George called you. Figuratively speaking, maybe he asked your mistress what's going on with her husband. I don't know, I replied. What exactly did you hear? He said you sold the business. I raised an eyebrow. And why would he call you? I mean your best friend. He was wondering if I knew. Best friend. What a joke. I'd been nothing but a clown to him, a clueless fool who didn't even see what his own wife was doing behind his back. And apparently my entire family felt humiliated that I was only a used car dealer. Well, yeah, I finally said. I sold it. That embarrassment is gone now. No need for anyone to hide their face when they tell people what I do for a living. You should have talked to me first, she said, worried about the money. Shouldn't we have discussed this? It's my company. I owned it before we were married. I can do whatever I want with it. I just hope the new owner treats the employees well. Did you at least get a good price? She asked, still thinking about her lifestyle. I didn't care about the money. I just needed freedom. I'll job hunt later. After I take a break. What about the mortgage? She demanded. I paid off the house with the sale. Now she really panicked. Food? Gas? Insurance? Oh, I said dryly, I guess I didn't think about that. Maybe you could work more hours? She inhaled sharply. When are you coming home? There was the moment she feared most. I'm not, I said. Kurt, you can't do this. Come home. I don't want to. Kurt, please. I've made my decision. What about your daughter? She whispered desperately. You mean Carrie? The kid who's ashamed of her last name and of the fact her dad was a used car salesman? She's just 13. Well, none of it matters now. I'm not coming back. At least now none of you have to be embarrassed of me. I hung up and turned my phone off. Let her sit with that. After a while, the rage settled and I focused on the road. She'd probably run straight to her lover and whine that her life was falling apart. When I finally reached Albuquerque, I powered my phone back on. 5 messages. 3 from Jenna. 1 from George. 1 from Anna. I called Anna first. Hey Anna. Sorry my phone was off. Too many calls I didn't want. I know, she said. Your wife and George called here looking for you. I told them you don't own this place anymore, so you won't be back. I hope everything's okay. Perfect, I said. If they keep bothering you, threaten to call the cops for phone harassment. She laughed. Kurt, you may feel like you don't have family or friends anymore, but trust me, you do. We're your family. Anna, I said quietly, I hope your husband realizes how lucky he is. He does. Every day, she replied. Don't ever take that for granted. After the call, I thought about calling my cheating wife and that idiot she was sleeping with, then decided, absolutely not. I stepped into the dealership office. You still have that Audi? The owner asked. I do. Want to talk trade? He inspected it thoroughly. I could sell this in a week. You sure you want to swap? Feels like I'm getting the better end. I'm not here to profit, I said. I just want a sports car. 30 minutes later, I was cruising north with the top down, wind in my face. Santa Fe, then New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado. 2 weeks of drifting across the Southwest. Calling Anna now and then, making sure things were running smoothly. Meanwhile, Jenna and George kept calling. First angry, then apologizing, then resentful. They reported they canceled my credit card. I laughed. George called me a villain for leaving Jenna and Carrie. I laughed harder. My lawyer texted. Jenna was threatening legal action. I called him back. I've got a recording, I said. Me saying I'm leaving and her telling me not to come home. Send it, he said. If she pushes this, I'll hand it to her lawyer. For nearly 3 months, I roamed the roads. Reno, Lake Tahoe, Napa, San Diego, Vegas, Phoenix. No rush. No responsibilities. People envied the freedom I had. Eventually, after 8,000 miles, I headed home. Well, to Silver City. At Helpless Auto, everyone greeted me warmly. New faces. Old ones. All happy I returned. Anna gave me a hug the second she saw me. Think we can get everyone together at Wrangler's? I asked. I want to treat the whole team. Absolutely. Later, at the restaurant, after everyone left, Anna looked at me and said, Kurt, you feel powerless because you trusted the wrong people. That's all. But I figured it out, the real story. The names. The clues. I met her eyes. You might be Polish, but those stupid jokes? They don't define you. You're more than that. They insult who you are. Anna, I said softly, you're the reason I came back. I needed to see how you handled everything. You taught me well, she said. We hugged and she left with her husband, who truly seemed happy. That night, I returned to the apartment I hadn't seen in 3 months. The air was stale, so I opened windows and sat on the terrace with a beer. Families swam in the pool below. Kids laughed. Life went on. I thought about Jenna. About how we started with dreams, plans, promises. Now those dreams were dust. Around 8:30 I stood up. Time for the confrontation. I drove to my house, still legally mine since I bought it before the marriage and only my name was on the deed. The yard was neglected. Grass dying. Everything uncared for. Carrie opened the door. Her eyes widened. Dad? Hey Carrie. Is your mom home? She stammered, then yelled, Mom. Jenna rushed out. What are you doing here? Traveling, I said calmly. Then George walked out of the bedroom, in his underwear. Oh, I said. The whole family is here. Mom, Dad, and child. What the hell does that mean? Jenna snapped. I guess George finally stepped into the role. Good for him. He deserved it more than I apparently ever did. She blinked, confused, while Carrie's anger grew. And then I calmly corrected her. George never worked for me. He refused the job I offered. So no, he wasn't fired. And as for bills, utilities, and insurance, those were all paid. Groceries and gas? You had a job. Did you lose that too? Do you really think you can just waltz back in and take over? Jenna challenged, voice sharp and defiant. No, I said calmly. I'll wait until you and your partner find somewhere else to live. It was painfully clear they were living in my house together. Carrie seemed unbothered, even content with the arrangement. I'm not leaving my home. Jenna shot back. Correction, I said evenly. This is my home. I owned it before we were married, and the deed is only in my name. You left. Now it's mine. That's not how the law works, she argued, defiance still burning in her eyes. Even if I cover the utilities and taxes, I remain the legal owner. I've been away briefly, but it's still mine. Don't worry, I'll give you until the end of next month to find a new place. Just make sure you take your daughter with you." "What do you mean, your daughter?" Jenna snapped. "You couldn't have said it more accurately," I said, a dry chuckle escaping me. Jenna looked confused. Turning to Carrie, I let the words fall. "Carrie, I know you hate being called Polish. So here's some news. Your real father isn't me. It's George." Silence swallowed the room. After a long pause, Jenna whispered, "What? Yes." "Yes, Jenna," I said evenly. "Your carelessness on our wedding day produced a child, but not mine. Good news for you, Carrie. You can now take your real father's last name. You are now Carrie." I paused, letting it sink in. I wonder if maybe Mom chose the name out of respect for her lover. Jenna and George exchanged glances. His face drained of color. "What about you, George?" I asked, voice sharp. "Don't you want to step up as a father?" Silence. "Well, that's unfortunate," I said, shrugging. "Time to take responsibility. But hey, look on the bright side, only 4 more years until college." Jenna and George almost spoke in unison, disbelief written across their faces. "I don't believe in that," they said, echoing each other. With a swift motion, I handed them the DNA report. "See for yourselves." They grabbed it, glanced at the results, and collapsed onto the couch, stunned. "Carrie," I instructed, "inform the lovebirds that your mother will be served with divorce papers next week, along with an eviction notice." I turned and walked away, leaving the weight of reality hanging in the room. During my absence, I couldn't stop thinking. Had this affair been happening throughout our marriage? Was I ever chosen or just a pawn? George had mocked me behind my back, even cracking Polish jokes to my face. I felt helpless, ignorant, and exposed. Back at the apartment, I drowned my thoughts in beer. The next morning, I met with my lawyer to begin the paperwork. Selling the house, splitting the proceeds, it didn't bother me. Being barely employed meant I wouldn't owe alimony or child support, especially with George in my place. At least that was the hope. The betrayal by Jenna and George was devastating. Rebuilding trust, whether in a man or a woman, would be almost impossible. Perhaps therapy could help. As the divorce proceedings began, I returned to the dealership. I made it clear to my colleagues, I was no longer the boss. I only needed 1 sale a week to cover expenses, and insisted on just that. When the court-ordered child support came, I made sure my accounts were empty, leaving only the bare minimum. Jenna hired a lawyer. I couldn't imagine how she afforded one. Maybe he worked pro bono. Regardless, they'd be in for a surprise. Even after scrutinizing my accounts during the sale, they uncovered nothing substantial. I learned from colleagues that George had visited the dealership almost daily during the first 2 weeks, trying to secure work from Anna. She consistently turned him down, and eventually he gave up. Now, without his ASC certification, his only option was Valine, doing quick oil changes for $13 an hour. I hoped Jenna worked full-time too, or they'd struggle. I contacted the realtor and listed the house, notifying Jenna that she needed to vacate before the sale closed. One evening, Jenna knocked. Reluctantly, I let her in. "What do you want, Kurt?" "Can we talk?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. We're in a legal battle," I replied. "Come on, Kurt. Just us. No lawyers. Civil conversation?" she pleaded. "All right. But Denny's?" I suggested. "There'll be witnesses." I didn't trust her enough to be alone. Over coffee, I asked the inevitable, "Why, Jenna?" She hesitated, then confessed, "I liked both of you and couldn't choose. So, I was seeing both of you at the same time." I studied her. "You were seeing both of us?" "Yes. But George warned me not to tell you, it would ruin your relationship with him." "Then why did you say yes when I proposed?" "Because I loved both of you," she admitted. "I loved him too, but I knew he wouldn't make a good husband. So I ended things with him when you proposed, focusing on us and the wedding." I probed further. "So on our wedding day, you were with him?" She nodded, tears welling. "Yes, everything was a mess. I didn't want to lose him, and he didn't want to lose me." "Well," I said, letting it sink in, "now you have each other, and your child." Carrie had done a fine job with her name, I thought, still stunned by the truth. I didn't know Carrie wasn't mine until much later, I revealed. Jenna looked at me, her voice soft. I still love you. It's nice to hear, Jenna, I replied. But I don't think you understand what love truly means. I loved you more than anything. Clearly you can't say the same. I loved you, she said. But now I feel nothing but contempt. Good, I said firmly. There will never be an us again. Before she left, I asked one last question. Have you ever stopped? After a pause, she admitted the truth. We never ceased. We had quiet times, but typically twice a month. I sighed. I hoped for a different answer, but I appreciate your honesty. One more thing, I said. About a year ago, your behavior changed. What triggered it? Her face flushed red, a flicker of anger in her eyes. George started pushing for a bacchanalia that didn't involve you. I might have considered it if you were part of it, but we couldn't navigate it. His persistence made me resent you for something I knew you'd never agree to. I thought I could have both of my men together, and I resented you for not being open to it. Did you actually go through with it? I asked, voice steady. No, she admitted. I thought about it, but then you left. Everything fell apart. Well, I said, standing tall, you're free now. Your choices don't control me anymore. We settled the bill. I walked to my car, chest light for the first time in years. 4 months later, we stood before a judge. Divorce finalized. George was there too. Exiting the courthouse, Jenna offered, maybe we can grab a drink? The traditional way. Certainly, I replied. The animosity that had consumed me for years, gone. Now they could be together. Let them. Let them wallow in the chaos they created. Jenna would have to adjust to a lower standard of living. And despite everything, I would always demand respect. If this story grabbed you, make sure to subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories, where every betrayal is exposed, every confession hits deep, and every ending leaves a mark. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support the channel, and stay tuned for more true stories from the shadows of love, loyalty, and consequence.